Breaking news! What if I told you the Ravens just made a move that looks minor on paper, but could expose something much bigger happening behind the scenes? A signing that isn't really about performance, but about power, control, and maybe even something deeper. Could this move reveal how the Ravens truly operate behind closed doors? Why some players keep starting no matter what, and why others never even get a chance? But before we dive into this, make sure you hit that like button if you're a true Ravens fan. It's always amazing to see fans of all ages supporting this team. And if you feel like it, comment, "Go Ravens!" Because this one might spark some serious debate in the flock. Now, let's get into it. The Ravens have signed veteran offensive guard Laken Tomlinson to the practice squad. This is a player with legitimate pedigree, a 2015 first-round pick out of Duke, a Pro Bowler in 2021, and a man who started nearly every game of his 11-year career. This year, he began the season as the Houston Texans starting left guard, starting 7 of their first 8 games before being replaced and waived. That's a resume that screams starter, right? So naturally, fans assumed someone in Baltimore's struggling interior line was about to lose their job. But not so fast. Despite the excitement, it's been made crystal clear. Tomlinson is not being brought in to replace Daniel Falale or Andrew Voorhees. Head coach John Harbaugh is sticking with his guys, and if the staff didn't make a change after watching the same poor guard play week after week, they're certainly not doing it now. This move was all about depth. With Ben Cleveland suspended 3 games for violating the NFL's substance abuse policy, the Ravens needed a warm body, and Tomlinson is that veteran presence they're leaning on temporarily, nothing more, nothing less. Harbaugh even addressed it directly. He said he didn't think Emory Jones, who was briefly rotated in at guard, played better than Falale or Voorhees, or even as good. That statement alone shuts the door on any fantasy of Tomlinson overtaking a starting role. So the question becomes, why the loyalty? Why the stubbornness? Why, with obvious alternatives available, do the Ravens continue to roll out guards who are statistically among the bottom third in the NFL? And here's where it gets deeper. According to Pro Football Focus, Tomlinson ranks 57th among guards who have played at least 20% of their team's snaps this season. That's not great, but consider this, Falale ranks 54th, and Voorhees comes in at 49th. So even if Tomlinson were to start, it wouldn't be a dramatic upgrade, statistically speaking. The offensive line's inconsistency has plagued Baltimore all year. Yes, they've had flashes of power and dominance in the run game, but those moments are buried under a mountain of missed assignments and poor protection. And the scariest part? The coaching staff sees this and still refuses to act. Fans are starting to ask the uncomfortable questions. Is Harbaugh's ego getting in the way? Is he trying to prove fans and critics wrong rather than making the best decisions for the team? Some believe this is about control. Others think it's about proving a point, riding with his guys instead of admitting mistakes. And some conspiracy-minded fans even believe poor guard play is being allowed to continue to create leverage against Lamar Jackson in future contract negotiations. Sound far-fetched? Maybe. But when your franchise QB is getting hit repeatedly behind a subpar line, and the front office does nothing, it raises eyebrows. And speaking of Lamar, the saga of his non-injury rest days continues. For yet another week, Jackson didn't practice, this time again labeled a rest day. This has become a pattern, and while the team insists it's precautionary, it's worth watching. If the offensive line doesn't improve, can we really afford to be resting Lamar when every rep matters heading into the playoffs? Meanwhile, there's a bit of good news. Harbaugh confirmed that Tavius Robinson and Darius Washington both have a shot to return this Sunday. Robinson's return was expected, but Washington's potential comeback has caught fans off guard in a good way. Some fans are even speculating that Washington, known for his solid tackling and defensive awareness, could push Alohi Gilman for snaps in the secondary. That would be a major shift in a defense that has been as inconsistent as the offense in recent weeks. And while we're on the topic of defense, some fans are expressing frustration with the coaching staff's continued reliance on players like Odefoa, who haven't produced consistently. Meanwhile, Carl Lawson, a proven veteran pass rusher, was just released to make room for Tomlinson. Lawson played 1 game, logged 26 snaps, and was then cut. The message? Performance doesn't always determine opportunity in Baltimore. It's about loyalty, system fit, and, again, Harbaugh's guys. This is where the frustration is boiling over. Let's get into it. The Ravens find themselves in a position many fans feared, talented, competitive, but stubbornly resistant to change. The offensive line, particularly the guard play, has been a glaring weakness all season. Yet despite signing a veteran like Laken Tomlinson, who brings over a decade of starting experience across multiple teams, Baltimore refuses to explore meaningful alternatives. It begs the question, are the Ravens truly prioritizing winning, or are they too married to a flawed internal philosophy? Tomlinson's presence on the practice squad, not the active roster, tells us everything we need to know. This was a patch, not a pivot, a temporary bandage to cover the absence of Ben Cleveland. Once Cleveland's suspension is up, Tomlinson could be out the door as quickly as he came in. And that's frustrating for a fan base that has watched week after week of inconsistent line play putting Lamar Jackson's health and the entire offense at risk. And while we're here, let's talk about Lamar. The non-injury rest days have become routine, but don't be fooled into thinking everything is okay. Rest days are usually given to aging vets, not franchise quarterbacks in their prime. This pattern may be precautionary, but it's also telling. Lamar's taken a beating this season, and even though the injury report doesn't say it, his body is clearly paying the price for an offensive line that struggles to protect him. Add to that the whispers that poor offensive line play might be indirectly used as leverage in contract talks, and now you've got a mess of questions with very few answers. The conspiracy theories, while extreme, aren't coming out of nowhere. Think about it. Lamar gets hit repeatedly. The team still refuses to make real changes to the O-line. The depth chart is full of guys who have underperformed all year, yet they remain untouched. Is it about continuity, chemistry, or is it about control? And let's not forget about the coaching decisions that have fans boiling over. The release of Carl Lawson, who was barely given a chance, stands in sharp contrast to the endless opportunities given to Odefoa, who continues to struggle with production. If performance was truly the metric, would this roster look the same? Would Voorhees and Falele still be locked in as starters? Would Isaiah likely be playing so many snaps despite questions about his blocking and effort? Fans aren't blind. They see what's happening. And it's not just about wins and losses anymore. It's about trust. Do fans trust John Harbaugh to make the necessary adjustments to take this team deep into the playoffs? Or has his loyalty to his guys become a liability? That's the conversation dominating the Ravens community right now. People aren't just asking if Harbaugh should stay. They're wondering if his time has already passed. And here's the thing. The Ravens have had some of the most talented rosters in the NFL over the past few years, offensively and defensively. And yet, what do they have to show for it? A handful of playoff appearances. No deep runs. No titles. No breakthrough moments that define an era. Just early exits and a growing sense that something is being left on the table year after year. It's not about hating on Harbaugh. It's about accountability. And at a certain point, when the same issues persist season after season, soft offensive line play, questionable rotations, poor time management, and a refusal to adapt, fans are going to start demanding more. Just look at the fans' reaction in recent weeks. They're calling out the inconsistency in officiating, like Isaiah Likely's controversial overturned touchdown compared to Zay Flowers' catch earlier in the season. They're pointing out the lack of intensity from the defense compared to teams like the Texans. They're frustrated by the underutilization of key weapons like Derrick Henry. And most of all, they're tired of watching Lamar Jackson carry a flawed team with limited support. And yet, this season isn't over. The Ravens are still in control of their destiny. They've got 4 games left: Bengals, Patriots, Packers, and Steelers. All winnable, all critical. If they run the table, they win the AFC North. But let's be honest, based on how this team has looked lately, how confident are you that they can do that? And this is where the conversation gets uncomfortable, but absolutely necessary. We're talking about a team with a franchise quarterback in his prime. A team that, statistically, has been in the playoff hunt year after year. A team built around a former MVP. And yet, we're still talking about the same issues that have haunted the Ravens for years: poor offensive line play, conservative coaching, and a refusal to adapt when it matters most. That's not just a coincidence, that's a pattern. And it's one that starts at the top. John Harbaugh has had an incredible run in Baltimore. No doubt, he's brought stability, accountability, and most of all, results, at least during the early half of his tenure. But we're over a decade removed from that Super Bowl. Since then, there have been stacked rosters, promising seasons, and plenty of what-ifs, but no true breakthrough. And for many fans, the goodwill is running thin. You listen to the voices of Ravens Nation, the ones who followed this team through every draft, every heartbreak, every false promise, and there's a consistent cry building louder: we need change. Not just at guard, not just on the depth chart, but in philosophy. And that brings us back to Laken Tomlinson. He represents more than just another body on the practice squad. His signing, and the immediate dismissal of any chance he has to compete